Welcome back to TPS. The NFL Draft is one of the most highly anticipated events in all of sports, so much so that its build-up rivals most games that actually take place between the lines. In fact, there might even be more analysis following the draft than an average game. Every year, analysts rush to the podium, eager to declare this year's winners, and perhaps even more emphatically, this year's losers. As devastating as a bad draft class can be, when your favorite team really puts together a good draft class, it is equally thrilling. Let's take a look back at every NFL team's best draft.
At TPS, we post videos every single day, so don't forget to click the subscribe button to subscribe. Then click the notification bell to be notified when we post a new video.
Oh, and a big shout out goes to I Am Human for sending in this idea. If you were human, I don't think you'd have to tell us. If you have any ideas, leave them in the comment section. You never know, we might use one and give you a shout out. Arizona Cardinals 2004. Despite being the NFL's longest running franchise, the Arizona Cardinals seem to have struggled in developing any sort of mastery when it comes to evaluating talent in the draft. Now, they are not completely inept. We are not talking Ryan Leaf kinds of swing and misses. But more often than not, the Cardinals find themselves on the wrong side of a flop. Their 2004 draft class, however, was an undeniable exception. Their first three picks were Larry Fitzgerald, Carlos Dansby, and Darnell Dockett, all three of whom earned Pro Bowl honors, and were the backbone of the 2008 NFC Championship team. It was a rather deep draft class too, as all 7 picks made the team, and 6 of the 7 played more than 20 games for the team. Atlanta Falcons 2008. The Matt Ryan pick alone makes the 2008 class deserving for the Atlanta Falcons. They were in uncharted waters as the face of their franchise, Michael Vick, disappeared into the infamy of dogfighting charges. There's a legitimate argument that Matt Ryan saved the franchise because if he had flopped, who knows what the Atlanta Falcons would look like today after chasing a quarterback for a decade. Baltimore Ravens 96. 1996 Ravens draft class may be one of the best draft classes of all time, let alone just for the Ravens. Not only did they take Ray Lewis, who made 13 Pro Bowls and 17 ridiculous seasons for Baltimore, but they also selected a generational talent on the offensive line in Jonathan Ogden. Throw in Jermaine Lewis, who became an All-Pro as a 5th-round draft pick, and it was a pretty epic draft for Ozzie Newsome and Baltimore. Buffalo Bills 85. When you take an 11-time Pro Bowler and 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, it is pretty hard to go wrong. Then when you add a Hall of Fame wide receiver out of Kutztown, whatever that is, in the 4th round, you know you had a pretty solid draft. Not only did the Bills net Andre Reed and Bruce Smith, but also NFL legend Frank Reich, who did only make 8 of his 93 career starts for the Bills. But that epic playoff comeback against the Houston Oilers was worth the pick in spades. Carolina Panthers 2001. The Panthers got some pretty insane value in the 2001 NFL Draft. They got Dan Morgan with the 11th overall pick. He upturned the Panthers' defensive unit from one of the worst in the entire NFL to the 2nd overall defense in the league, and was an integral part of the defense that carried Carolina to Super Bowl 38. And they only followed that up with Chris Jenkins and Steve Smith in rounds 2 and 3. Pretty good. Bears 65. For all of the Bears' recent follies in the draft, I'm looking at you, Mitch Trubisky and Kevin White. They actually used to be pretty damn consistent on draft day. Perhaps their best class of all time was that legendary 65 draft class when they took Dick Butkus and Gale Sayers, 2 guys who walked to the Hall of Famer, with consecutive first-round picks. Bengals 2011. While the Bengals 2011 draft was a bit top-heavy, the fact that 2 players all but turned the franchise from a complete joke to a perennial playoff team speaks volumes. Although they could never get over the hump, far be it from me to place an ounce of blame on A.J. Green or Andy Dalton, as those 2 of 2011 draftees did everything in their power to make the Bengals a winning organization. Browns 57. While the Cleveland Browns have found themselves in the middle of many recent draft day punchlines, this was not always the case. Back in 57, before the Super Bowl even existed, they picked 3 Hall of Famers in a single draft, including Jim Brown, who is widely regarded as one of the best running backs to ever do it. Dallas Cowboys 64. I'm a little hesitant to go all the way back to 64 when the Cowboys have had so many draft classes since, but when you take 3 Hall of Famers, it is hard to ignore. Mel Renfro and Bob Hayes put their electric speed to use on the defensive and offensive sides of the ball, respectively, and the Cowboys happened upon NFL legend Roger Staubach in the 10th round. So all in all, you have to give 64 the nod. Denver Broncos 83. Gotta go chalk with this one. That 83 class was special, and the Broncos were one of the many beneficiaries. Even if their crown jewel from the draft, John Elway, wouldn't have even ended up there if he hadn't hardballed the Colts. In trading their draft day selection, Chris Hinton, and a few other spare parts for Elway, who led them to 2 Super Bowls on his way to Canton, warrant some credit. Plus, this draft gets bonus points for the Broncos having bookended it well, taking Carl Mecklenburg in the 12th round. He went on to be selected to an impressive 6 Pro Bowls. Detroit Lions 2013. The Lions are another one of those teams that just never seems to get it right. So it took a little bit of digging to find a draft class worth mentioning, but as it turns out, it was more recent than you might think. Both Ziggy Ansah and Darius Slay, the Lions' first and second picks, proved to be very talented pros, and Larry Warford has become a 3-time Pro Bowler since leaving Detroit. So that counts for something. Green Bay Packers 2009. It may be a little bit surprising that a team that has existed pretty much since the dawn of time would have had their best draft class as recently as 2009, but it is hard to argue against that 2009 crew for the Packers. Both their first-round picks, B.J. Raji and Clay Matthews, were key contributors to their 2010 championship team, and they made a few other nice picks in T.J. Lang, Jarius Wynn, and Brad Jones. Houston Texans 2013. The Texans don't exactly have an illustrious history to sift through for an all-time draft class, but that 2013 group was pretty impressive, even if they did just trade away its crown jewel in DeAndre Hopkins. After taking Hopkins 27th overall, they added DJ Swearinger in the 2nd round and David Quessenberry in the 6th. Not exactly an all-time great haul, but not too shabby for a team that drafted the likes of David Carr and Tom Savage. Colts 98. The decision to take Peyton Manning, pretty good. Choosing him over Ryan Leaf, even better. Jerome Pathan, E.G. Green, and Steve McKinney, their next 3 picks, leave a little bit to be desired. But when you land a player like Peyton, you deserve all the credit in the world. Jacksonville Jaguars 95. The Jaguars were a young franchise back in 95, and they made a few quality selections. Tony Boselli was an all-decade talent in the 90s. Brian DeMarco started 39 games for the Jaguars and was on his way to a promising career before succumbing to a brutal spinal injury. Add in linebacker Brian Schwartz, and it was a pretty impressive draft year for Jacksonville. Kansas City Chiefs 2017. Okay, this might be a little bit of a recency bias here, but when you have the foresight to trade up for Pat Mahomes, you deserve the credit. Between that and landing Kareem Hunt in the 3rd round, this was an epic performance by the Chiefs scouting department. Vegas Raiders 68. The Raiders had a pretty special group in 1968, and their best picks didn't even come in the 1st round. Instead, Ken Stabler was their 2nd round pick out of Alabama, and the quarterback led the Raiders to 7 AFC title games in 9 years and a victory in Super Bowl 11. Then it was Art Shell in the 3rd round, who went on to 8 Pro Bowls and a golden jacket. And 2 Raider fan favorites in safety George Atkinson and bruising fullback Marv Hubbard helped that 68 group solidify the Raiders dynasty of the 70s. Chargers 2004. Although this draft class came way before the Chargers made their home in Los Angeles, it is hard not to give them credit for making the best out of what could have ended up as a disastrous situation, as Eli and Archie Manning basically helped the Spanos group over the barrel and belittled the franchise for the whole world to see. Not only did they end up getting a perennial Pro Bowler in Phillip Rivers, but they also got 3 additional picks out of the swamp and made some pretty good use out of their draft capital. 2 of them were in the 2005 draft, so we won't count them, even though Sean Merriman was a pretty good pickup. But in 2004, they landed Igor Olshansky, Nick Hardwick, Sean Phillips, and Michael Turner. The haul was good enough that it might have even put them in a better position than they would have been if Eli had agreed to play in San Diego. Rams 83. While some of these entries were a little tough to pick, the Rams was a gimme. Eric Dickerson and Henry Ellard both went on to be Pro Bowlers, and obviously Dickerson was about as surefire as a Hall of Famer as they come. Add in Mike Wilcher, who had a solid 8 seasons for the Rams as an edge bruiser, and it is simply too good to pass up. Miami Dolphins 83. Pretty much every NFL fan knows about the 83 draft at this point, but it is impossible to talk Miami Dolphins draft classes and not bring it up. Not only did they luck into a Hall of Famer in Dan Marino with the number 27 overall pick, but they also picked up 3 other Pro Bowlers in Reggie Roby, Mark Clayton, and Anthony Carter. Minnesota Vikings 67. When a draft class goes on to form a team with as awesome of a moniker as Purple People Eaters, it simply cannot go unmentioned. Between Gene Washington, the all-pro wideout, and Alan Page, the defensive tackle, who became the first defensive player to win the MVP honors in NFL history, the Vikes made out pretty well back in 67. Patriots 95. The star power in that 95 Patriots draft class was pretty insane. To take Ty Law and Curtis Martin in one draft is a huge win. Martin was one of the most prolific runners in the NFL for a decade, and Ty Law was one of the best true lockdown corners out there. Saints 2006. There was just something about the year 2006 down in the Big Easy. Not only did it mark the arrival of Sean Payton and Drew Brees, but they also welcomed in 6 solid players that helped lead the franchise to its first Super Bowl title in 2009. Although Reggie Bush didn't live up to the hype, to be fair, that would have been next to impossible. And he did punch in 38 touchdowns during 5 seasons in New Orleans, while serving as a key target in that explosive offense. Add in Pro Bowlers like Roman Harper and Jari Evans, and 3 unreal talents with Rob Ninkovich taken in the 5th, and Zach Strief and Marcus Colston taken in the 7th. And this was one of the more impressive draft class hauls of all time, especially considering how late they found the talent in the draft. Giants 84. As much as the younger Giants fans might want to point to those 2000 mid-draft classes, that helped set the table for the team's epic Super Bowl runs. I have to give the nod to the 84 class. Between the perennial studs they got in Carl Banks and Gary Reasons at linebacker and William Roberts at guard, and the key contributors for Super Bowl 25, which saw guys like Jeff Hostetler and Lionel Manuel emerge as the unlikely heroes. The 84 draft should have a special place in the hearts of longtime Giants fans. Jets 2000. The Jets 2000 draft class is one of the most fun groups of guys that the franchise ever took in a single draft. They had 4 first-rounders that year, and one of them did come at the cost of Bill Belichick. It's not like he was going to remain there long-term. Anyway, it's one thing to have 4 first-rounders, and it's another thing to entirely make good use of them. But having taken the likes of Sean Ellis, John Abraham, Anthony Becht, and of course, Chad Pennington, the Jets certainly did make good use of those picks. Tack on the diamond in the rough they found in round 3 in Laverne Cole, and this was truly an awesome draft for the New York Jets. Eagles 2002. Okay, this might be a little bit biased because I think that Brian Westbrook, who somehow fell to the 3rd round, was one of the most exciting players in the early 2000s to watch, but even so, you can't argue the key pieces that the Eagles added during this draft. Guys like Lito Shepherd, Sheldon Brown, and Michael Lewis all in one draft. That 2002 class really was a linchpin in those excellent mid-2000s Eagles teams. Steelers 74. Pittsburgh is one of those organizations that has had some all-time draft classes, but the nod has to go to the group taken in 74, as 4 of the lot made it to the NFL Hall of Fame. 4 of their first 5 picks in the drafts straight to Canton? That is simply insane. The Steelers added John Stallworth and Lynn Swann at wideout, Jack Lambert at linebacker, and Mike Webster at center, 4 guys whose reputations speak for themselves. 49ers 81. It is hard to argue against the 49ers 1981 draft class. The addition of Ronnie Lott alone was a game changer for the entire franchise, as he took the defense from steady to unbreakable, and they charged to a Super Bowl victory the next year. It wasn't just Lott contributing in the defensive backfield out of the 81 draft class either. Between him, Eric Wright, and Carlton Williamson, the Niners pieced together one of the best secondaries in NFL history, largely thanks to one draft. Seahawks 2012. Seattle's 2012 crop deserves some special recognition because of all the groups listed here. This may have been the most hated one in real time. And man, oh man, do those draft experts ever have egg on their faces with this one. Bruce Irvin and Bobby Wagner were monsters for those beastly Seattle defenses. Oh, and they happened to stumble upon some short quarterback in the 3rd round, Russell Wilson. You may have heard of him. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 95. Well, this is a pretty easy one. The 1995 draft class in Tampa Bay was downright special. It started off with Warren Sapp, who serendipitously fell to number 12 because of failed drug tests at Miami, and Sapp only went on to 4 first-team All-Pros and an NFL Defensive Player of the Year award in '99. If that wasn't enough, they also got 11-time Pro Bowler Derek Brooks at the end of the 1st round. When you get 2 no-doubt Hall of Famers in one round, who cares who else you took that year? Titans 99. The 99 draft class for Tennessee has to get the nod here. The addition of Javon Kearse, who burst into the scene in 99 by setting a rookie record with 14.5 sacks and 8 forced fumbles, helped turn the middling Titans into a legit Super Bowl contender almost immediately. Between him, defensive lineman John Thornton, and Zach Pillar, who anchored the Titans' offensive line for Steve McNair and Eddie George, the 99 draft was a big-time win for Tennessee. Redskins 81. When you think Washington Redskins, you don't tend to think excellence or confidence even. Not anymore, at least. But there was a time during the early 90s when they were one of the NFL's dominant franchises, and the 81 draft class really started to get the whole thing in motion. Between Mark May, who started 115 games for the Redskins at guard, Russ Grimm, and the future All-Pro who was actually undrafted Joe Jacoby, the pieces started to come together for that dominant offensive line we all came to know as the Hawks. On the other side of the ball, they took Darryl Grant, who started 109 games at defensive end, and Dexter Manley, one of the best pass rushers in franchise history. Dan Snyder wishes he could piece together a draft like this. Which do you think was the best draft class in your favorite NFL team's history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to hit that subscribe button. If you like the video, then like the video. We'd really appreciate it. And last but not least, don't forget to tune in to TBS every single day for more cool videos. We'll see you next time.